My name is Martin Bissig. I'm a Canon Ambassador based in Switzerland. I'm holding in my hand the latest Canon EOS R5. I had the chance to test this camera for a full week. Here's the result. Hello and welcome to this live stream here. My name is Martin Bissig and you've seen it. I was lucky enough to test the brand new Canon EOS R5 for a full week, and in this 45 minutes up to an hour I would like to talk about my experience with the camera. So the thing first, if you have any questions, please ask them here. I will try to answer the questions as far as I'm capable of. And yeah, it would be nice to have a little bit of a communication rather than just me sitting here and having a monologue. So, as I said, my name is Martin Bissig. I'm a photographer based in Switzerland and I'm a Canon ambassador. And to give you an idea about the way I work and why I was using, or why I had the chance to test the R5, you see it here because this is what I do. So my main job is I'm a photographer, I'm an outdoor photographer, and I travel around the world. And when the EOS R was released about 2 years back, then for me it was clear that this is going to be my weapon of choice because of the small size and the compactness of the body. The EOS R was a great tool for me. This is a shot I took in Pakistan on a 3-week trip last year in summer when I joined 2 cyclists going up on the Baltoro Glacier. Here's another shot of me going up Kilimanjaro with Scottish mountain bike legend Danny McAskill. And here's another picture that I took in the desert of Oman. So this is how I shoot, and that's what I do as a professional photographer. This is what I don't do. I don't do test shots, I don't do image comparisons. So when it comes to your technical questions, I mean when it's really technical and when it gets into details, I might be not the right person to ask. I'm an ambassador, yes, but I'm not a manual and I'm definitely not a technician. I do not work for Canon. I use the Canon cameras, so I can give you answers to your question when it comes to working with the camera out in the field, when it comes to using the camera in a daily environment, but I might be the wrong person if you want to know more about the smallest, tiniest little technical details. So that's not what I'm really good at. So I'm someone like you probably. I love to go out in the field, take pictures and shoot. So my shots get published all around the world. This is something that I took in Naples 2 years back. So all of my images that I do are getting published quite a lot. We're talking about 30 countries, 30 publications per story, and I do about 2 or 3 stories a year. So we're getting somewhere around 100 to 120 publications in about a year. So this is what made me the one of the most published outdoor and mountain bike photographers on the planet. Of course, I just don't do magazine work. I do work for clients. Here's a shot that I do for my clients here in Switzerland or around the globe. I mainly shoot pictures of cyclists, of action, and so this is why I got approached by Canon to test out the brand new EOS R5. And the R5 is actually, when it was first announced, it was all I was looking for in a camera on the paper, but I was not sure if it's going to be great out in the field on a daily basis. So let me just quickly talk through a couple of points about the camera. You all know about this, obviously, but Let me just quickly talk to a couple of things, and then I would like to show you some real-life samples that I took during that week. So when it comes to image quality, we are having a brand new 45 megapixel sensor with the capability of shooting ISO between 100 and 51,200. I got asked this quite a lot about the ISO performance and about the dynamic range. And as I pointed out in the beginning of this live session, I'm not a studio shooter. I don't shoot comparison things. So for me, I cannot really tell you from my experience, honestly, how much better the EOS R5 is compared to the 5D Mark IV when it comes to ISO performance or when it comes to dynamic range. All I know is that I was told by Canon it's one step better when it comes to ISO performance compared to the 5D Mark IV, also when it comes to the dynamic range. In my daily workflow, this isn't something that is extremely important for me, because I rather shoot with ISO 32,000 and get the shot even though it might be grainy, other than miss the shot and have a lower ISO setting. So yeah, here it is, and I would like to show you now one or two sample shots that I took during that week. Let's start with this one here. This one was shot in the mountains of Switzerland, and it was shot early in the morning, and you can see the shadows of the mountains and the details. Even though the light was coming on the back of my model, you can still see the face and everything, the jeans and all that. You can see the details. And I just got a question in from Shane about the RF lenses I was using during the test. Yes, I did use RF lenses. This is something that we can talk about right now if you like. I was using all the RF glass, or most of the RF glass that is available right now. This shot actually was taken with the RF 70 to 200 2.8. However, I was also working with the 15 to 35 millimeter, with the 24 to 70 millimeter, with the excellent 28 to 70 millimeter, with the 85 millimeter 1.2, and with the 50 millimeter 1.2. However, if you think about switching to mirrorless with the new RF mount that came with the Canon EOS R, that is now in the R5 and the R6, the really cool thing is you don't need to go out and buy all your lenses from scratch. So you can use your old EF glass that you're having already working or coming from a Canon DSLR. You can use it with the adapter, with the EF adapter, and there's actually really no downside using your EF glass, your EF lenses on your EOS R5. The image quality is the same. The autofocus performance is the same, the maximum aperture, everything is the same. So you do not lose any quality if you're using any EF glass with your R5. So that's actually a really cool thing, that if you're thinking about switching from a DSLR to the R5 right now, you just can buy the body at this moment, then slowly start switching or exchanging your current EF glass if you want, going over to the RF glass. Obviously, the RF lenses are superior when it comes to image quality. For example, in the wide angle lens, when you compare the 15 to 35 millimeter, the RF is superior than the 16 to 35 millimeter. So yeah, when you're switching over from the DSLR, that's quite a big step forward when you put RF glass on. Plus, it's either smaller, the lenses are smaller, or have the same size, but with built-in image stabilization. So there's actually a lot of upsides switching to RF glasses in the future. So let me show you this next shot here that I took, early morning shot again. You can see the beautiful details back in the mountains, the dynamic range of this shot. Obviously, this shot has been in post-production. I did a little work on it, but I would like to show you now how it looks when I look through the camera. So when I look through the camera, this is what it looks, and when I zoom in here, that's what I do now for you. When I zoom in here, up to 100% or even more, the most I can zoom in. So this is the furthest you can zoom in the camera. You see the beautiful details in the background here. Now they can even zoom in more, and you can see all the different kind of shades, and you can see the beautiful details of the 45 megapixel sensor. So this is really awesome when you're coming from a 5D Mark IV or even the EOS R as I did right now. The extra resolution you get, it's just it's simply amazing, the quality you get out of this. I would like to show you another example here that shows you the resolution of the sensor. When we zoom in here, this is also shot early in the morning in my home area. So when you zoom in here, the furthest you can, I mean, it's amazing the amount of detail you can see here, and even there in the back in the mountains. It's just, it's really a big step forward. And even though the R5 has about 5 megapixels less than the 5D SR, it resolves the same amount of detail, so you don't lose any details. So basically what you can say is you have about the same amount of detail shooting with the 45 megapixel sensor than you have when you're shooting with a 50 megapixel sensor of the 5D SR. So let's step in another great feature that Canon released with the EOS R5, and it's a huge step forward. It's about the image stabilization. You can reduce camera shake of up to 8 stops when you're working together with an RF lens that supports image stabilization as well. There is a 5-axis camera shake reduction in the camera built in, so even if you're using your current glass that does not have any image stabilization built in, you still have a 5-axis camera shake reduction that works across the whole zoom range. Doesn't matter if you're coming from a wide angle or if you go up to a telephoto shot, it doesn't matter. This itself reduces the camera shakes of up to 5 stops, but as I said, if you're using the right lens with the camera, the new RF lenses, you can get up to 8 stops of camera shake reduction, and this is just awesome. How does that look in a real life situation? I can show it to you here. It is a picture that I took also early in the morning, and let me just quickly, this is also post-process, but let me quickly move into the picture a little bit more, and I let you look through my viewfinder, and this is what I see when I look through the camera and when I zoom in. So this was taken with 1/4 of a second with the 15 to 35 millimeter, and as I zoom in, you can see 1/4 of a second handheld. The only thing that it's not completely sharp are some of the branches of the tree, but this is caused by motion blur, by the wind, but the subject itself, it's crystal clear, and it's amazing what the image, what the in-body stabilization of the EOS R can do. So this is really a great new feature, not only for photography, but also when we're talking about filming. It feels like you're holding the camera on a gimbal, or if you look through with the RF glass, it feels like you're having your camera on a tripod. So it's really amazing to see that one here. Now, something that's extremely important for me as a sports and action photographer, it's the high-speed continuous shooting. And when Canon came out with the news that this camera can shoot up to 20 frames per second with a resolution of 45 megapixels, for me, that was like, boom, I need to have that camera. And when we're looking at the details, that's how it looks. So we're having Just quickly go through these slides here. We're having 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, and we're having 12 frames per second with the electronic front curtain, and we do have 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter. So let me quickly point out the differences for me as a photographer when it comes to shoot in a real life situation. When do I choose the mechanical shutter? When am I going for the electronic shutter? Well, the first thing is there are certain situations where I simply do not need the 20 frames per second. So mechanical shutter with 12 frames per second is perfectly fine for me. The downsides when using the mechanical shutter, you get that vibration of the shutter when you press it. So if you're having your camera on a tripod, for example, you get that vibration. Plus it's noisy. You can hear when you release the shutter. So these are a bit negative points when using with the mechanical shutter. However, if you're coming from a DSLR, you're fully aware of this situation. Now, the maximum frames, as I said, when shooting with the mechanical is 12 frames, and Canon made a mixture between the electronic shutter and the mechanical shutter. This is the mode where you can choose of the electronic front curtain, of the electronic first curtain. What does it do? Instead of having the first frame taken with the mechanical shutter, it does it with the electronic shutter. So therefore you do not have that vibration in the body, and you still have the mechanical shutter afterwards. The upsides of this method, when you're using mechanical shutter, you do not have rolling shutter effect when you're working with the mechanical shutter, and there is no flickering. And these are the two downsides when we're looking at the 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter. So the downside of working with an electronic shutter, it's the rolling shutter that can appear. However, I must say, and you will see it in my samples afterwards, I did not experience any problem with rolling shutter when it came to high-speed action. So that part for me wasn't a big issue. What I did not test, but something that I'm fully aware of, under certain light sources indoors, flickering can appear when you're shooting with the electronic shutter. So when you're shooting indoors under difficult light situations, I suggest you just use the mechanical shutter instead of the electronic shutter. Another big plus when you're working with the electronic shutter, it is completely silent. So when you push the button, all you see is around the frame, around your frame, a white little surrounding which blinks. So a light little white frame that blinks up, and this tells you, okay, you're now taking pictures. But other than that, you do not feel or hear anything that you're actually shooting. Coming from a DSLR, that's quite a different style of shooting, and first I needed to get used to it, that when I pressed the shutter nothing was happening in relation to sound or vibration or anything. It was just taking pictures. So I had to check on the display afterwards and see, okay, yeah, I really did take these shots. So let me just go through the menu that is new here with the Canon EOS R5, where you can switch your shutter mode, and it looks like this. So there's a menu where you can switch between mechanical, electronic first curtain and electronic shutter. So this is where you set your shutter mode in the menu. Now, let me show you a couple of shots that I took with the electronic shutter. And this one was taken here in Switzerland, super fast speed. I was shooting, so this freestyle motocrosser was going very fast, and there was only one tiny little fraction of time of his jump when he was looking back, and probably with the mechanical shutter, I would not have been able to take that shot. So let's have a look at another picture here. I wanted to have the athlete framed by these flowers here, and that was only possible when I was working with the electronic shutter. Let me quickly show you how this looks when I look through the viewfinder of my camera. So you can see the way he moves, and you can clearly see there's only one part of the frame, and it's exactly this one where I wanted to have him framed. Other than that, now let's quickly zoom in and see if he's in focus. Yes, he's perfectly fine and in focus. So this shot I would not have been able to take when shooting with the mechanical shutter. Also, these shots here, when working with the pro mountain bikers in the bike park, you can see that there's just one split second where the athlete is really in this move, and shooting with anything less than 20 frames, I might have missed that shot. Here's another example of a mountain biker, and yeah, you can see this is just one specific moment that I wanted to have him. Let's quickly see through the viewfinder, and I show you the movement. So when I go back and forth, you will see he moves so fast that only one little part of the image actually works for me. So when I'm going back, it's actually this shot here, this one here that I want to have, or this one. So I can choose. So there's just very little motion in between. I can zoom in, see if the rider is in focus. Yes, it's perfectly fine. So this is the shot I decided to take at the end, and this would not have been possible shooting with less frames. Same for this shot here. With skateboarders, even more, the skateboard flips around. I just wanted to have him in that very specific moment and the skateboard in the air. So this is how it looks when flipping through the shots. You can see the skateboard that flips around, and I have the option to choose from all these shots. And when I take it with the electronic shutter, we're talking about 35 to 40 pictures I take during that sequence. Another very, very important thing for me, obviously, is the autofocus. And this is where the EOS R5 was a complete eye-opener for me. I mean, I've been working with the EOS R for the last 2 years. It did work for my purpose, even though we all know it's not the fastest camera for sports action. And I had the chance to test the 1DX Mark III when it was announced. That was already last year. I had the chance to work with the 1DX Mark III, and the new Digic 10 or Digic X processor that was built in was just simply amazing, I must say. So when I heard and when I was working with the camera, it was obvious that it's a huge step forward coming from the EOS R, but also coming from the 5D Mark IV that I was using before, working with the autofocus with the EOS R5. One of the biggest positive things when you're coming from a DSLR, now you have the possibility to choose 100% of your frame as your autofocus area. So this is really great. The tracking works in all high-speed continuous modes. It doesn't matter if you're shooting 20 frames per second. It doesn't matter if you're shooting 12 frames per second mechanical. It works throughout the whole high-speed continuous mode. When you're working with the EOS R, if you're coming from the EOS R, you know already that you can set your autofocus point by touch and drag on the back of your LCD screen. If you're coming from a DSLR, Is it from the 5D Mark IV or any other DSLR? You were used to set your autofocus point with the joystick, but now one of the features that the R5 took from the EOS R is you can use the back of your LCD to set your autofocus point while looking through the viewfinder. You can set it to absolute, you can set it to relative, but while you're looking through the camera, you can move your 5,900 autofocus points around, which is simply amazing. And this, for me, is a completely new way to set my autofocus, and it works really well. It's super fast. It needs to you need to get used to it a little bit, but once you're done, or once you have set it properly, it's really cool to use that feature. It's got an awesome eye and head autofocus. I will show you an example afterwards, and it has animal detection built in. This is a feature that personally, for me, it's not that important, but I know for a lot of you guys out there, it's one of the most important features. And I've seen footage where the autofocus works on body, face, or even the eye of birds and lions and cows and horses and dogs and cats and everything. So the autofocus system and the Digic X processor that is built in the R5 really sets a new standard. But obviously also for me, as a sports and action photographer, it allows me to take shots that I would not have been able before. One of the cool new features, if you're coming from the EOS R, it's not so new for you if you're coming from a 5D Mark IV or a 1DX. It's got autofocus cases. You've got different cases to choose from that works for different scenarios. One of the new features that the EOS R borrowed from the 1DX Mark III, it's the new auto feature. So when you see here down, you've got an auto feature. So the camera chooses which one of the autofocus cases works the best. So for all the shots I took, or I would say 95 or 99% of the shots I took, I was setting my camera to auto. So I let the camera decide which is the best autofocus case to choose. And here are a couple of results I would like to show you. Yeah, this was taken with autofocus servo, and how does it look when I flip through my camera? It looks like this. I will go through a couple of images so to let you see how the autofocus catches on the athlete, and it attaches on the athlete on every single shot. I shot open wide 2.8, and I'm going through a whole sequence of shots here to show you not one single frame was missed by the autofocus. Shooting 2.8 or even more open, you can see every single frame, every single shot. The autofocus catches on the rider, and it's just simply amazing. Same for this one here. You can see the athlete. He was wearing black clothes in front of a very contrasty background, so not the easiest task for an autofocus to perform. But when I'm flipping through the shots, and there's a whole session, there are 4 or 5 jumps. You can see every single frame is in focus. The autofocus is attached to the rider and would just not lose the rider at all. So when I'm flipping through these shots here, so this is 3, 4, 5 different sessions I took one after the other, and you can see that really the autofocus performs in an incredible way. Yeah, this is for the motocross setting, but when you look at this one here, I would like to demonstrate you a little bit more about the eye and head autofocus that is built in. So when you look at this rider, I was shooting straight against the light, so the sun is coming from the back, and I would like to show you live view out of the viewfinder how I see it. So when I look through the viewfinder, it looks like this. So I overexpose by 2 stops, and the autofocus catches on the eye. Now he turns back, you see it's on his eye. Always, if he turns around, this is a very difficult task for an autofocus. And when I zoom in a bit more, you see, even if I move my camera around, it never loses its head. And the cool thing is, now look, he turns his head around, all I see is the helmet, and the autofocus stays on the helmet, on the head. So this is really cool, because not always I can see the eyes of my athlete, or I can see his face because he's wearing a helmet, but my autofocus recognizes this of the R5, so this is really, really awesome. Now, let's move forward. I must say, when I got the chance to work with the camera, I mainly focused on the still images, because this is what I do as a professional photographer. I'm working with still photos, but obviously the video function that this camera it has built in, it's just simply amazing. Even though it's amazing, we need to keep in mind that this camera, it's a still camera with amazing video capacities, with amazing video specs. However, it's not a video camera, so this is not what I see it. I see it as a photo camera with video functions built in. So when we flip through here, you all know that it's got amazing specs. It's got 8K that I'm able to shoot in 3025 or 24p in RAW, or 12 or 10-bit with or without Canon log, and that's all internally. So that's a really amazing feature. When we move forward, I have the option to shoot 120 frames per second in 4K in 10 or 8-bit. Where I'm going to show you some of the samples afterwards. I have 4K that I can shoot in 10-bit with or without Canon log, with all different frame rates from 60 down to 24. And I have a really cool oversampling mode for high quality 4K. What's an oversampling mode? Oversampling, it uses the whole image, or the whole sensor, the whole 8K sensor, and it reads out all the pixels on this sensor, and internally it calculates it down to a very crisp, a very clear, a very colorful, high quality 4K image. So this is what 8K oversampling is. And when we go further through the details, then we talk about the maximum record time. I saw that there was a question asked on either, I think it was Facebook or Instagram. Someone asked about the capabilities of recording the videos on 2 memory cards at the same time. So you need to keep the following thing in mind. When you're shooting 8K or when you're shooting 4K in 120 frames per second, that's a lot of data that needs to be processed. So in order to write that data, we have the new Compact Flash Express card built in the reader in the camera. So you need to have a super fast Compact Flash Express card in order to save all these data. So recording simultaneously on 2 cards, it's not possible, neither in the R5 or in the R6. What you can do is you can record 4K or you can record 8K RAW on the Compact Flash Express card, and at the same time you can record a proxy file on your SD card. So these are the options when it comes to record in dual mode, when you want to record twice on your memory card, but you cannot record the same video file twice. Therefore, if you want to do that, you need a sophisticated filming camera. So there has been quite a lot of discussion going on about the overheating problem, I would say or the overheating issue that the R5 has when it comes to filming. And as I said, there's a lot of data that needs to be processed. And if you're shooting, and let me quickly go through the maximum record time when it comes to shooting. So this is approximately at an outside temperature of 23 degrees. We're talking 20 minutes of record time in any 8K mode, or about 20 minutes of record time when it comes to super slow motion in 4K mode. in high quality mode or 60p, we're talking a maximum record time of 30 minutes. And if you're shooting in 4K with 25p, you get unlimited recordings. So for people who were complaining about the overheating, yes, there is a limitation to the camera, and Canon always has been very open to that. It's simply impossible to have a weather-sealed body and also have the heat to escape. So this is something that just simply doesn't work, and therefore Canon made the decision that if you're shooting with a very high resolution or with a high frame rate, the camera needs a certain time to cool down. When I did the test, so real life situations, I never ran into the problem that the camera was overheating. I was shooting my riders, they were coming through the frame. I stopped the recording again. So in a real life situation, when you are shooting for a long time, let's say you shoot an interview or you shoot some documentary or whatever it is, you're shooting, normally you don't shoot very long takes, and even if you do, you're shooting in 4K 20 frames per second. And the other modes, at least for me, when it comes to my sports photography or my sports filming, if you shoot 120 frames per second, you just do it for one jump, for one little section, and then you switch it off again. Same for 8K. It's a huge amount of data you're producing if you're shooting in 8K. So yeah, I never ran into the problem when it came to overheating. And if you're seriously in need of shooting 8K raw, for a film or a documentary, you would need to have an additional and a backup camera anyway, which would allow you to switch from one camera to the next. So let me quickly go through the video settings that we're having here. The cool thing is Canon made it really easy now to flip through the video settings. So when in the top row you've got the resolution, and in the bottom two rows you've got the frame rates and the compression. And when you flip through, you can see that all the possibilities you have. So from 8K you can see right away what frame rates you can shoot, what compression you can shoot, so this is really cool. It makes it really easy for you to see right away what are the possibilities to pick from when it comes to filming. Now I would like to show you a couple of shots that I took with super slow motion, and this is mainly what I need the camera for. If I shoot high frame rates, this is something that's very interesting for me. And you can see these are shot in full 4K. You can see the motion, it's super clear, it's really nice, and you can see every little detail. You can see the movement of the athlete, and it's really cool to use the camera like that in 4K. Currently, it's just possible to shoot 120 frames in 4K. However, there might be a possibility that in future that Canon might add, or hopefully they might add a possibility to shoot 120 frames per second also in full HD. So now, my verdicts. For me, it's the best camera ever built, period. This is what it is for me. There's not more I can ask for. It's got 45 megapixel sensor, it's got in-body stabilization, it's got 20 frames per second continuous shooting. I can shoot super slow motion up to 120 frames. I can shoot 8K video in RAW, and all that squeezed in a tiny little compact body. I mean, there's nothing else, honestly, I could ask for at this moment. So for me, for the work I'm doing, it might be different for you, depending on what your job is or what you're doing. It is the best camera ever built. So yeah, that's my verdict when it comes to the camera. So right now I'm open for any questions there might be. So if there's any questions you might have, just shoot them out. If you want to know something about my work or about the camera, I try to answer these. And I'll be here for another couple of minutes. And yeah, just let me know. So I'm still here just in case you might have any questions when it comes to working with the EOS R5. Just let me know. I'm here for another couple of minutes, and otherwise I'm sure your questions can be answered afterwards here on this Facebook page as well. So there has just been a question coming in about how I would use and rate the in-body stabilization. For me, it's kind of difficult to compare it to any other in-body stabilizations in the cameras of any other competitors, because I haven't worked with any, and also coming from EOS R or the 5D Mark IV or even the 1DX Mark III, there were no image body stabilization built in. All I can say is I was working up to 1/4 of a second. However, I saw that other ambassadors were using the camera up to 2 seconds handheld. This is honestly something I haven't tested out, because I'm working with sports and with fast movements, so in-body stabilization it's not something that I use a lot, but for what I can tell when it comes to filming, it's amazing when you work with an RF lenses. And yeah, this is all I can say. It's a big step forward. You can really use it for long exposures. Used it with the right lenses, it gives you up to 8 stops of camera shake reduction. What other mirrorless camera brands have you used? Someone else is asking. I am a Canon Ambassador, but obviously I want to try out new stuff as well. And I was working with a Sony once for one shoot just to test 2 years back, but honestly I don't even remember the model it was. I was just testing it, but being a Canon shooter from the beginning, I was used to the ergonomics, and I was used to the menus, and obviously owning all the glass. Yeah, I haven't worked with any or with much or with many other systems yet. So yeah, I've just used the EOS R for the last 2 years, and I've been very happy with that one. And now obviously I'm super happy when it comes to the new camera, the R5 that has been released. What's my favorite shooting location? Well, there are many locations that I shot, and it really depends on what I would like to shoot. I'm fortunate enough to live in one of the most beautiful and diverse countries there is that I've seen so far, and I've seen many. I live in Switzerland, so for sure Switzerland is an amazing place to shoot pictures, but also when I look back at all the expeditions I did, I love to shoot in Iran. I love to shoot in the Himalayas, and I did a great photo shoot in Greenland. So there are actually tons of places I love to shoot, and it really depends on what you like, if it's landscape or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of hard to pick one favorite location to shoot. Another question regarding the locations, regarding the spots I would pick. You know, when it comes to action shots, I never have, or most of the time I do not have the possibilities to go and check out the location before. So actually, if you're working with good athletes, any location you go is suitable to do action shots. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say which location is the best for action shots. So you can make something out of almost any location there is. My favorite RF lens. There's another question that came in. My favorite RF lens. So when the EOS was released in the beginning, there were only a couple of lenses that were released from the start, and there's not one single lens that works for me. I've got a lot of different lenses that work for different projects, but one of the lenses I love the most on my daily work is the 28 to 70 millimeter 2.0. It's an amazing lens. It's quite big, therefore I don't use it on expeditions, but it's quite big when you compare it to the size of the body. But it's an amazing lens. It replaces 3 focal lenses in my opinion. So to cover anything between 28 and 70 millimeter, that's the lens you need. 2.0, it's beautiful. However, as I said, going on expeditions, it's not the perfect lens because it's just too big and too heavy for me to carry it on a 2-week trip through Pakistan, for example. And therefore, I used the 24 to 240 millimeter lens last year, which a lot of you might say, it's not the best lens when it comes to image quality and when it comes to the aperture, the maximum aperture. Sure, it's not comparable to any of the prime lenses, but you've got one lens that covers the whole zoom range from 24 to 240 millimeters, and you don't need to switch lenses during the expedition, which is a big thing for me. So when I work, I have one EOS R with the 15 to 35 millimeter, and I have the other EOS R with this 24 to 240 millimeter attached. So I don't need to switch lenses at all, and I work with 2 bodies, and this is something that really worked for me in the past, and therefore there's no favorite lens. I have a lot of lenses that I like. It depends which lens suits the most for the project that I'm currently on. There's another question about the EF lenses on the R adapter. Yes, I did, especially in the beginning. I was working a lot with my existing 11 to 24 millimeter lens with the EF lens because there was no wide-angle lens available for the RF mount for a long time. And it works actually the same as it does on the 5D Mark IV. So there's no downsides, no quality issues, no autofocus problems, nothing. The only thing is, if you're looking at the size of the body of the EOS R5, and then, for example, of the 11 to 24 millimeter lens, plus you add that little extension, that little adapter on, it feels like a little bit of an imbalance when you're having that big front lens plus the adapter with that in comparison to a 1DX Mark III or 5D Mark IV, a smaller and lighter body. So it does work, but the relation between the lens and the body just doesn't feel quite right for the 11 to 24 millimeter, and that's why I moved as soon as the wide-angle lens came out from the 11 to 24 to the 15 to 35 millimeter. But I was using EF glass a long time, and actually for the last 2 years I was working a lot with EF glass on the EOS R, and it worked perfectly fine. So actually really no downsides when it comes to that. So, at the moment, there are no more questions coming in as I see. Other than that, if you still have any questions after this live session, do not hesitate to post them here on Facebook. We'll try to answer them as good as we can. So if there's anything you want to know, just write it down here. And that's actually all for me to say is thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about the EOS R5. I was just waiting for another question, but that was about it. So my suggestion would be, if you're thinking about switching from DSLR to just go out and try the R5. Go out and rent it out for a day, go out and test it, put your hands on it. You need to see it to believe it, honestly, when it comes to the speed and the performance. I can describe it as much as I want. I can show you my nice shots that I took, but at the end of the day, you need to know if it suits for you. And all I can say, the R5 is all I was waiting for such a long time, and I'm really glad it's out. And that's definitely the camera I'm going to use for the next couple of years for all my photo shoots. And yeah, I hope you're having fun taking pictures, and hope to see you around at another occasion. Until then, please stay safe and stay creative. Hello from Switzerland, and bye-bye.